Now we've got Congressman from Arizona and now U.S. Senate candidate Ruben Gallego. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to start with what I think is the most obvious question here, and that is, what happens if we find ourselves in a situation where Kyrsten Sinema does decide to run for the U.S. Senate as an independent, and that, even taking a few percentage points would make her a spoiler and basically hand that race to Republicans? What happens in that scenario?
Well, that doesn't happen. What happens in any scenario is that I end up winning, whether Sinema is in this race or she's not out of this race. I end up being the senator. She is, roundly unpopular. She has no base to work from. The only people that do like her are Republicans. So we do feel that that's where she's going to be pulling from. Obviously, we have to run a good campaign. We have to have the funds to do that. We're very lucky. We've had 27,000 individual donations in 3 days. People have gone to gallegoforarizona.com and just kept on hitting the donate button, and it's going to help us propel us to win this race.
But is there a scenario where, even if she does have a few percentage points from center-leaning Democrats, that she can, act as a spoiler in this race? I mean, I'm sure that bears itself out even to some small degree in polling that you've seen.
No, our polling doesn't show that. Again, you have to run a strong Democratic campaign in order to win that. And the best way to do that is obviously to run and win. There's no scenario in which this comes out with Senator Sinema staying a senator. She can't win. She obviously can't win a primary. That's why she switched. She's always going to be in third place. And so any other people suggesting that somehow we should just let her have a free pass is going to also ensure the fact that this still ends up, will end up for sure in a Republican hands. A strong Democrat is our best approach to this. And at the end of the day, a strong Democrat with great connections to the community, that's Latino, that speaks Spanish, that can really turn out younger voters, is going to be a sure shot versus whatever else people think would be a sure shot, I guess.
Now, Senator Gary Peters, who's the head of the DSCC, has been pretty non-committal about who the DSCC is going to support thus far. What's your message to the DSCC about deciding what to do in this race, given that we know that Kyrsten Sinema is an independent, not a Democrat?
Well, look, we're worried about Arizonans first. We know that we can win this. If we talk to Arizonans, we consolidate our support in Arizona, and we'll worry about the DSCC later. It's still early in the game. We feel pretty confident that once everything shakes out, people look at who's running the best race, who's more likely to win, that will end up getting support of all organizations.
What are you going to do to appeal to those Sinema voters out there who may be more inclined to vote for an independent? Like, how do you reach those people whose political identity is expressly the fact that they are against, the traditional party structure?
Well, I think it's important for them to understand this isn't about party. This is about service, right? Who is Kyrsten Sinema working for? Independents aren't going to be very happy when they know that she watered down our prescription drug bill, that seniors have to pay more for prescription drugs because she went to advocate and lobby for pharmaceuticals instead of for seniors. They're not going to be happy when they find out that she allowed a tax cutout, I should say, for hedge fund managers and private equity managers to be kept in the code because they encouraged her and support her, monetarily. They're just not going to be happy when they understand that the Voting Rights Act did not go into effect because she, went and backed up the filibuster. So time and time again, whether it's watering down the infrastructure bill, they're not going to be very happy about it. So she may be independent in name, but she certainly has not been independent in action.
Is there a constituency for what she's doing? Because that's the only thing that I can land on in terms of why she's doing what she's doing. But is there any I live in California. There's lots of Democrats around the country who probably live in bluer states than Arizona, and just kind of maybe can chalk it up to maybe there's some constituency where she lives for what she's actually doing. But it doesn't strike me as that would be the case.
I think what's important is there's a constituency for everything to begin with, yeah. But is there a constituency that helps you actually put a coalition together to win?
Yeah,
there is not. It doesn't exist. There's no mythological huge block of independents that are just raring to go for Kyrsten Sinema, because again, independents aren't happy with the fact that she continuously, sells out, and not only that, is nearly non-existent in Arizona. She doesn't have public meetings. She doesn't meet with citizens. She doesn't have town halls. She has very scripted events. where it's very tight about who can even ask questions, and she rarely even speaks to the press. So we don't know what the Sinema squad looks like, but it's going to be pretty small.
No, that's her. What about you? What are you running on? Why run for the U.S. Senate?
Well, I want to run for the U.S. Senate because I want to help people like me when I was in some dire straits, whether it was dealing with PTSD, whether it was being poor at 14 and trying to live the American dream. There's hundreds of thousands of Arizonans right now that want to live the American dream, but every day are feeling financial pressure, just to make ends meet. And you need to have a senator who actually cares about that, not care about who's sitting in front of you in Davos, but who's sitting in front of you in Arizona. And she's more likely, and she feels more at home in Davos than with our town hall, citizens that go to town hall in Arizona. That's what we need right now. We actually need somebody that cares about them, that's going to try to get the child tax credit back, so that way people can live, a little more comfortably. So, parents aren't as stressed about raising their kids. Someone's going to really fight to bring pharmaceuticals down and not, stand up for the pharmaceutical companies. These are the little simple things that she should be doing, and it's not doing. And even worse, she doesn't answer to anybody. All of us should be accountable to voters, and she feels like she's above that. She doesn't talk to them, really treats them in a dismissive manner. And now, she will have to see what happens with the elections.
There was one moment where I think a reporter finally finally found her in the halls of Congress one day, and they're like, the voters want to know where you are. And she was like, well, what do you mean? I'm right here in the elevator. And I was like, this is just the most disingenuous thing I could possibly imagine a politician saying.
Yep.
What do you believe in terms of, obviously the filibuster is going to be an important issue as we move forward. What are your thoughts on the filibuster, just so that we're on record on that issue?
Look, at a minimum, we should be reforming the filibuster. It is being used as a tool of obstruction. It's used by a minority to really hold power. At some point, you have to realize that it's not being done, and it's not even done in an altruistic manner by the opposition. So I'll give you a good example. A couple of years ago, the filibuster would be rare to unused. And now you have it being used, for example, to stop reform after Sandy Hook, right? Where 21 kids, kindergartners were killed by a madman. And even then, the Democrats and Republicans, introduce a watered down gun right bill that still died because of the filibuster. And then soon after, again, not soon after, but way too soon anyway, in Uvalde, again, we tried to pass some, comprehensive gun legislation. And because of the filibuster, we ended up passing even a further watered down bill than what we had passed after Sandy Hook, right? And that's because we had to hit this artificial number of 60, which is not even the Constitution, when we could have had a very strong bill that probably could save a lot more lives. But Sinema decided to stay with the filibuster for really no good reason, except for so she could say to her Republican friends that she's with them.
Yeah. And the irony about that is that all of the Republican priorities, which are judges and tax cuts, they've already created carve-outs in the filibuster. So they don't even act as if the filibuster applies to them on their priorities. But, we impose the filibuster by virtue of having people like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. We impose that burden onto ourselves for our own priorities. What do you say to people, though, who promote the usual argument of like, well, you say that until you realize the damage that Republicans can do by eliminating the filibuster?
Your idea should be able to survive the test of time. We've seen time and time again that Republicans have tried to get rid of, for example, the Affordable Health Care Act, and we're not able to do that. I think at the end of the day, the reason why Democrats lose is a lot of times because we get into office and we do nothing. I think it's been a very productive session because of Biden's leadership and Pelosi's leadership and Schumer's leadership. But, there's time and time again where we should have been producing and having some victories. Comprehensive immigration reform is a really good example, something we've been talking about forever and have not been able to pass because of the filibuster. Protecting women's right to choose. We should have codified Roe v. Wade. Kyrsten talks about being pro-choice. and then refuses to break the filibuster in order for us to codify Roe v. Wade, but then has the audacity, mind you, to send out emails asking for support because of her support for Roe v. Wade. This is the type of things the opportunities that we're missing because of people like Kyrsten Sinema.
Now, you brought up comprehensive immigration reform. Obviously, Democrats have struggled to keep their margins up among the Latino community. I know that you're not responsible for what other Democrats do, but what are you going to do to garner support among Latinos in Arizona?
Well, look, it's not what I've just done. I've actually just led the most successful year for Bold PAC, which is Congress Hispanic Caucus PAC. We now have the largest amount of members in Congress, and we not only won in Democratic areas, we won in some right-leaning areas with Democratic candidates, and we kept all of our incumbents. And so what I'm going to do is what I did this year, really understand the Latino community, understand how to turn them out, really work with our grassroots organizations to turn out the vote and do it early and go on to win. I've done this before, even in my own race. I always overperform every Democrat statewide because Latinos will trust me and will vote for me. And at the same time, they will vote for a Donald Trump or they will vote for another Republican. And, that's something that now I'm going to take statewide.
Now, on the other side of the aisle, we still have a long way to go, but Republicans are already clamoring for this nomination on that side. And one of those is possibly Kari Lake. What threat does someone like Kerry Lake pose to that state?
Well, to the state, it's very dangerous. She would be a laughingstock. She would probably jump into a lot of the conspiracy theory caucus that exists within the Senate and try to pass legislation to disenfranchise a lot of voters. Kerry Lake's never going to be a U.S. senator. If she jumps in, I guarantee you, I will be winning that race from day one. But it's always good to run this campaign. We got to make sure you get out the vote. Got to make sure you spend the money to get out the vote. The water's warm if she wants to jump in, or if any Republican wants to jump in.
Now, on the House side, we've seen Kevin McCarthy start to embrace someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Greene had her hand way deep into the events of January 6th. We have that video that she posted on her own social media explaining that she was attending a planning meeting for the events of that day. How you reacted to the events of that day has been really widely publicized. I mean, you have some pretty strong quotes, how you reacted to the insurrectionists and what you were willing to do to protect yourself and your colleagues. What's your response to Kevin McCarthy empowering someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene in this 118th Congress, given the fact that she basically put you and your colleagues' lives at risk that day?
You could expect that from Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, it's the fact, she's, there's not much you could say. I mean, she's a trashy person, and she, was very, I would say on that day, acting like a traitor too, and still is. McCarthy's got no excuse. He is just such an empty vessel that he'll do anything just to fill it. And that includes, selling himself and selling the institution of speakership for him to become speaker. But at some point you mess with monsters, they eventually will turn on you, and it's going to happen. But Kevin McCarthy's not smart enough to survive this. He doesn't have enough integrity to survive this. They will eat him alive to the point where he'll probably be a biggest embarrassment to the speaker in quite a while.
Yeah, he's already coming into his position as the weakest speaker, probably in modern American history. So how can we help your campaign?
Look, again, we are going to have to run a very strong grassroots campaign where we are hitting those doors. There's going to be a lot of money being thrown at us, or a lot of negative ads thrown at us by a lot of very strong moneyed interests, because they want to keep their favorite lobbyist as a senator in Kyrsten Sinema. So please donate. GallegoForArizona.com. And every little bit counts. I would really appreciate it.
I would highly recommend that anybody watching definitely donate if you can. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time, and good luck in this campaign.
Adios. Thank you.